As he used to speak for over an hour, and then he says, I have abrogated the Constitution.
And this commission was constituted by almost all views.
The summary of the recommendations in the legal language, it is just the reduction of the recommendations, the basic recommendations of the commission in the legal language.
The chairman may put the question, and the delegates who support the matter shall then answer aye, and those who oppose.
No doubt in my mind that is a matter of time. People will embrace the federal issue.
So people say, what was wrong with the Constitution? Nothing wrong with the Constitution.
In 1894, Uganda was declared a British protectorate. The protectorate was established under the administration of Sir Gerard Poto and involved the incorporation of the kingdoms of Buganda and Bunyoro into British territory. In 1900, the 1900 Buganda Agreement between the British and Buganda was made. It gave Buganda chiefs a lot of personal land, imposed a tax on huts and guns, designated chiefs as tax collectors. In the same year, an agreement similar to the 1900 Buganda Agreement was made between the British and Toro Kingdom. Other similar agreements signed were the 1901 Ankole Agreement and 1933 Bunyoro Agreement. In 1902, an order in Council of 1902 was passed. It established a system of legislation through the promulgation of personal decrees by representatives of the British Crown. In 1920, another order in council was passed. It created a legislative body, the Legico, with a membership of 7 Europeans and headed by the governor. In 1961, representatives of the two political parties, UPC, led by Milton Obote, DP, led by Benedicto Chiwanuka, attended the Uganda Constitutional Conference in London, negotiated and drafted the 1962 Independence Constitution with the aim of establishing a parliamentary democracy modeled after the Westminster system. The conference focused on key issues such as the distribution of legislative powers, fundamental rights, the head of state, and the structure of public service, culminating in a constitution that granted Uganda independence from Great Britain. In 1963, Uganda witnessed the first constitutional amendment when the Independence Constitution was amended to replace the Queen of England with an elected president as Uganda's head of state. The amendment transformed Uganda from a constitutional monarch into a republic within the Commonwealth. In 1962, following the tension between Buganda and the central government, Godfrey Lukongwa Benaisa, then Attorney General, under Obote's instructions, drafted an interim constitution. And on April 15, 1966, the 1962 Independence Constitution was formally abrogated during a parliamentary session and replaced by the new one, popularly referred to as the Pigeonhole Constitution, because of the method it was delivered to members of parliament by mere dropping a copy in their pigeonholes.
It was broadcast live. I listened. I didn't hear point of order. I didn't hear point of motion. I didn't hear anybody opposing. And this man stands there and talks eloquently as he used to speak for over an hour. And then he says, I have abrogated the Constitution. Said, but I know you people are interested in the Constitution. So when you go out, you'll find a Constitution in your pigeonhole. And that's why it gets that name, Pigeonhole Constitution.
In 1966, Uganda's constitution replaced the 1962 Independence Constitution and centralized power in the national government. 1. It eliminated the federal structure and special privileges for the kingdom. 2. It altered the amendment process to allow changes to pass with a simple majority rather than a two-thirds majority. It also reduced restrictions on constitutional amendments concerning the kingdoms. 3. The executive power was vested in the president, who was the leader of the majority party and appointed a vice president and cabinet. The cabinet was collectively responsible to parliament. In 1971, Idi Amin captured power in a military coup. He subsequently suspended both Parliament and the 1966 Constitution by virtue of Legal Notice No. 1 of 1971.
Then if that you are not a minister.
Uganda under Idi Amin was consequently ruled by decrees consolidating executive legislative powers in himself as the chairman of the Defense Council and his Council of Ministers, effectively rendering the Constitution irrelevant.
If I see the minister is a coward, automatically I kick you out of my office.
Following the overthrow of Idi Amin in 1979, Legal Notice No. 1 of 1979 nullified Legal Notice No. 1 of 1971 and fundamentally recognized the 1966 Constitution as once again supreme, but also suspended parts of it and transferred numerous executive powers to incoming President Yusuf Lure.
Defend the Constitution. So have we not.
All legislative powers referred to in the Constitution were to be vested in the National Consultative Council, NCC, an interim legislative body acting as a supreme parliament from 1979 to 1980.
And one of the things they had to do was the parliament must have very clearly defined oversight on the executive. And another one was all appointments must be screened or vetted by the parliament, which was the National Constitutional Council.
Bringing Lule or Benaisa to be president of Uganda is not an issue.
Following the return of Obote to power in 1980, the 1967 Constitution was formally revived.
The president of Uganda's role is written in the Constitution of Uganda.
In July 1985, General Tito Okello Lutwa overthrew Obote in a military coup. The Constitution was suspended once again. On seizing power in 1986, Yoweri Museveni's National Resistance Government confirmed that the 1967 Constitution was supreme but partially suspended. In particular, the provisions in the Constitution relating to the existence of a national parliament and the election of the president were suspended for 4 years in Legal Notice No. 1 of 1986. It was later extended to 8 years. The details of this suspension was set out in Legal Notice No. 1 of 1986, which nullified Legal Notice No. 1 of 1979, and it directly vested executive powers in Yoweri Museveni. In order to establish a stable, democratic and unified nation after decades of political and constitutional instability, in 1986, the Uganda Constitutional Commission was formed, chaired by Justice Benjamin Odoki.
And this commission was constituted by almost all views. You call the UPCs, they were there. If you talk of DPs, talk about any views, the Baganda, the Westerners, the Northerners, everybody was there that constituted the commission.
The commission oversaw the process of drafting a new constitution by conducting nationwide public consultations to gather views and proposals.
And we used to go and have rallies and talk to the people, sensitize them, and then they give their views, which we collected. I think we collected over 25,000 views. I mean, collections of rallies and whatever. And then we had group submissions, we had individual submissions, we had the civil society submissions. We had several people giving submissions to the commission.
After extensive public engagement, data analysis, and comparative study of other constitutions, the Commission prepared a draft constitution.
Now, the draft constitution is the summary of the recommendations in the legal language. It is just the reduction of the recommendations, the basic recommendations of the Commission in legal language. The views of all the people who contributed the views are listed in this document, index of sources. All their names are listed, and all the documents referred to are listed here. It's for the people to see. And the statistics on which we based the recommendations are also included in this. For instance, how many people, how many memorandum favored federal or unitary, or how many people favored multi-party or movement.
Following a countrywide adult suffrage election exercise in 1994 to elect people's representatives to the Constituent Assembly, an assembly comprising 284 delegates was subsequently formed. The Constituent Assembly Act of 1993 provided for an assembly body composed of 288 delegates, broken down as follows. Of those, 214 were to be directly elected from the districts, 74 representing special interest groups, among which were 10 to be appointed by the President, 10 by the NRA, 2 by the National Organization of Trade Unions, and 2 by each of the active political parties at the time. In addition, 4 delegates were to be sent to Constituent Assembly by the National Youth Council and 1 by the National Union of the Disabled Persons of Uganda. Women's representation was so crucial in the assembly that was taken into consideration. As such, 39 women were to be elected by the Electoral College of Sub-County Councillors and members of the Sub-County Women's Councils at the district. And on February 16, 1993, the assembly under the chairmanship of James Wapakablo officially opened, starting with swearing in the delegates.
Serve the Republic of Uganda.
Serve the Republic of Uganda. Delegate to the Constituent Assembly. Kintu Musoke.
Of their true faith and allegiance to the Republic of Uganda as my well established. I, Matendo Media, do hereby swear.
So we established the Constituent Assembly, not based on the original constituencies, but on the smaller, sometimes 2 Gomboras, 1 Usaza, so as to accommodate as many people of Uganda, so that at the end, when the constitution is adopted, everybody says it is our constitution.
We must learn the culture of tolerance, understanding, and respect of other people's views.
Thereafter, proceeded to debate the draft constitution to come up with a final constitution that would form a basis of good governance by defining the structure of government, guaranteeing fundamental human rights, and asserting the sovereignty of the people as the foundation for the new socio-economic and political order. For a period of 1.5 years, Uganda's Constituent Assembly comprehensively debated the draft constitution article by article, clause by clause. Some of the debates turned volatile because of the level of contention they generated. Key among the hotly debated issues were the country's political system, specifically the movement or no-party politics versus multi-party democracy, land rights and tenure systems, federalism, human rights, to mention but a few.
Is now to appear.
One of the most controversial issues addressed in the Assembly deliberations was the future of political system. That is, whether the country should adopt a no-party movement system, a multi-party system, or some other democratic and representative systems.
Mr. Chairman, given our political history, since independence, The issue of the type of political system on representation and governance is a serious matter in my own opinion. We should therefore not discuss this motion as if we are in a courtroom trying to win a case or on a political campaign platform trying to win votes. The way we handle a possible system on representation and governance will determine the pace for the process of state formation, a process that has eluded Uganda for a whole generation.
There were several dramatic standoffs between movement supporters and the supporters of multi-party system.
The movement system was intended as a combination of social forces committed to resolution of a crisis, and so is by nature a temporary system which should not be entrenched into the Constitution.
The one over, it has not been perfected yet, but it's so far the best system. The one over.
I want to say this, Mr. Chairman. True, they want their rights. But I also want to say that we too want our rights. If they had their rights to cause chaos, we want our rights to maintain stability.
The multi-parties wanted the Constitution to provide for freedom of association and creation of an interim government composed of all political parties that would govern the country for 3 years until the Constitution would come into force. While the movement failed, the country was not ready for multi-party politics, and it would fracture the country irreparably. The NRM delegates promoted its movement system as a necessary antidote to the perceived chaos of multi-party politics.
I would advise the multi-parties to work with the NRM, however limited it may be, until such a time when we have established independent democratic institutions.
Mr. Chairman, democracy is about more than majorities. It is about the right of every individual to freedom and justice, about the dignity of each individual, his right to choose and his duty to serve. And if you look at our constitutions here, we are talking about individual right to freedom.
Mr. Chairman, I will start by tackling this now overemphasized right of freedom of association. Where were these great advocates of freedom of association when the people were dying? Where were these great advocates of freedom of association when opposition members like Sebukwa were being hacked out of parliament and murdered in cold blood? Where were these great advocates of freedom of association when our people were being picked in every corner of this country and being murdered for taking just a different view?
In the end, the Assembly decision reinforced the recommendation of the Constitutional Commission that the movement should continue in power for another 5 years, after which a referendum should be held to determine whether or not to transition to a multi-party political system.
If in 9 years, the movement, with all its supposedly superlative army, with all its supposedly superlative cadre, has not successfully prepared the people of Uganda to reasonably and rationally pursue multi-party democracy, what guarantee is there that in 5 years they will succeed?
The multi-parties have been preaching compromise, accommodation, tolerance. But what is contained in their speeches? Threats, war, call for mutinies, insults, and calling for breakup when they are not agreed with. So what compromise are we proposing? Honorable Kanye, because we have been talking about compromise, we want to reject this the motion from Honorable Cecilia Ogwa. You can smile. and then accommodate the Honorable Kania amendment. Then we sit in the Kania amendment and make arrangements. Because this is accommodative, it recognizes parties, it recognizes the movement, and if the movement is not good, the people reject it. And it enshrines the fundamental rights of our people and their sovereignty. That is the right to election and referendum.
The Kania amendment, which is presumably to be debated later, does guarantee the right of Ugandans to determine the political system under which they wish to be governed by a referendum. We can argue whether it should only be by referendum or whether it should be by free and fair elections. I would be arguing if that amendment comes that we should also include determinable by free and fair elections. I don't see why we should not accept that as a method of changing political systems. But it goes further. It says that the people of Uganda shall select their political system from the ones we know and any others which may come up in the future.
Through an election, decided on the political system for the people of Uganda. We have decided that for the next 5 years, the people favor overwhelmingly the movement system of governance. We should therefore not make it so difficult for the people.
And the views were clear, maybe because we had just come out of war. Said, no, let's continue with this. Then after some time we can find a way. That's why we said after some time a referendum should be made, because we knew it wouldn't be in perpetuity.
This is the issue.
Another major conflict erupted over federalism and governance of Buganda.
If we say we don't need a monarch with an army, with police, with a territory, then we should tell.
If that be the problem, let me put it this way, that in Britain, for example, by making the monarchy a constitutional position, whereby the elected people take the decisions and the monarch has to accept them, that is a way of democratizing that institution.
Buganda royalists had sought to establish Buganda's pre-1966 autonomous status, under which all districts in the kingdom paid taxes to the Mengo government rather than the central government.
No doubt in my mind that it's a matter of time. People will embrace the federal issue. At the moment, there have been many forces dismarketing it, and I believe that a number of people who are opposing it are merely misunderstanding the essence of it. But they want power, and that power must be entrenched.
The royalists proposed that the Kabaka should administer Buganda while serving as the titular head. Some wanted the name Republic of Uganda changed Sovereign State of Uganda. The Constituent Assembly resolved to call Uganda a sovereign state and republic. The Buganda delegates had mixed feelings about federalism. While many supported the recognition of Buganda culture, they were not ready to give up Uganda's republican identity. Many also feared that Buganda's federalism was the first step towards secession. In the end, Mengo gambled and lost its bid for federalism. The majority of the assembly delegates took the view that federalism would undermine the unity of the country. They agreed to recognize Buganda as a distinct entity, but instead of federalism, they opted for decentralization and devolution of powers from the center to the district level.
First of all, I don't agree that there's no more federal, because even when decentralization is entrenched, it is in the right direction of federalism. The units are rather trivial under the decentralization program, so we're not happy with that.
The issue of human rights was heavily debated during the assembly. The debates confirmed that the new Constitution's Bill of Rights aimed to promote and protect human rights, drawing from international instruments like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Chapter 4 on human rights and the basic freedoms is one of the best in any constitution we have given. The rights of women, of children, soldiers, disabled, workers are all enshrined there.
While the Constitution aimed to secure human rights, there were debates about the balance between civil liberties and other considerations.
I'm also happy to add that the one who sent me here allows freedom of speech and association. And that's why he has made a great contribution to the improvement of the quality of life. And what I would dread is to lose that qualitative improvement at the last hour.
Uganda's commitment as a signatory to international human rights instruments was a significant factor in the debates, with the delegates aiming to ensure the Constitution included adequate safeguards against human rights violations. The debates addressed issues such as the balance between individual freedoms and public interest, and the extent of limitations that could be placed on rights like freedom of assembly. The key outcome of the debate was the decision to set up the Uganda Human Rights Commission, a body which would comprise a chairperson, notably a judge of the Supreme Court or High Court, and not fewer than 3 members, all appointed by the President with approval of Parliament. The Constituent Assembly debate on Uganda's land tenure system centered on balancing the diverse land tenure systems, including Milo, customary, freehold, and leasehold, and their conflicting implications for property rights, economic productivity, and the social order.
We had to make a constitution that accommodated everybody. For example, in northern Uganda, land is communally owned, and there was the threat that if you take it either to the state or give it to individuals, that would go counter to their land holding system. So we had to make compromises to accommodate all sections of Ugandans. Of course, I believe that if land belonged to the state, it would be faster in terms of turning around the economy. But Ugandans have had this long-standing ownership, and way back from the colonial times, the Milo land, the leasehold system, and I am not sure that it is entirely a bad thing that land should belong to the people. I think ownership is important. The important thing is, in my view, is how you use land.
While the Constitution aimed to vest land authority in citizens, it created ambiguities, particularly regarding the government's power to acquire land and the rights of the occupants versus landlords. Remarkably, the debate culminated into provision of the protection of lawful and bona fide occupants on registered land.
For example, in Bunyoro, we consciously decided that government over time should acquire land legally and compensate for the absentee landlords, you know, who are many and who held chunks and chunks of land. We'll pay them, return the land to Bunyoro, and to be administered the way government would set, the methods. Now, before implementing that decision, people became interested in becoming the new landlords. So some of them went and looked for the absentee landlords, purchased the land, all right? Others just acquired. And so that decision was never implemented.
The debate on judicial independence centered on establishing strong constitutional safeguards against executive and legislative interference, particularly in funding and personal matters.
First of all, I am, by the way, generally opposed to
to the idea of having the president appoint anybody from parliament for any reason.
Key issues included defining the separation of powers, ensuring the judiciary could exercise power without fear or favor, and establishing institutional mechanisms to guarantee its operational independence from other government arms. Another proposed amendments in the draft for inclusion in the Constitution that generated heated debate was the National Council of State. The motion that was moved by Tiberio Kenyi was decisively defeated in spite of the popularity it gathered soon after it was moved.
We had recommended that the way we see things, we need a body which will be in the middle of parliament and the president. Well, we said in case there is a controversy between the executive or the president and the parliament, who would resolve these conflicts? And we had read other African constitutions which had brought democratization, like Ghana. And we said, no, we should have the National Council of States, which would be constituted by actually people, senior people who don't politic, who are not interested in the politics of winning elections and that kind of thing.
Overall, the Constituent Assembly's deliberations lasted 29 months, from the time Assembly opened on February 16, 1993, to its conclusion on August 25, 1995, when the 242-member Assembly adopted the new Constitution in toto. The Constitution was enacted on September 22nd.
The following motion: that the Constituent Assembly, sitting at the Uganda International Conference Center, Kampala, this day, 22nd September 1995, enacts the draft Constitution as the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, as required by Section 19 of the Constituent Assembly Statute number 6 of 1993. Mr. Chairman, I beg to move.
On any matter, the chairman may put the question, and the delegates who support the matter shall then answer aye, and those who oppose shall answer no. As a motion moved by Honorable George Kanyamba, that the draft Constitution be enacted as the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. I now move the question. Will those in favor of the motion say aye, to the contrary, no?
However, the enactment turned dramatic when some members from the opposition staged a walkout stand to protest the enactment.
And it's also provided that the promulgation of the Constitution by the Assembly shall be done in the presence of the President and the members of the National Resistance.
On October 8, 1995, the new constitution was promulgated by President Museveni in a colorful ceremony witnessed by the Chief Justice, judges, cabinet ministers, religious leaders, top government officials, and members of the public who followed the events from the gallery.
When it was promulgated, everybody said this is the finest constitution Uganda will ever have or has had. But forget about Ugandans. All commentators, experts and so forth, said the Uganda constitution is a model.
The ceremony was crowned with the act of giving each delegate a copy of the new constitution.
I would like to declare the 8th of October of every year hereafter as Constitution Day.
As a sign of endorsement of the new constitution, delegates took time off to ceremoniously append their signatures on the document.
I don't subscribe to the predominant view that Museveni had a big influence on the content of the Constitution. I don't subscribe to that. Because I was very central. I participated at every stage. I also was very, very highly placed in the movement, being a member of the political high command. That is when we should have received views, instructions from the president, but that was not. And my contributions, even if you go to the Hansard, you'll find that these were individual contributions, not contributions from orchestrated by a power that be behind us. No.
Our constitution in Africa, besides that of Uganda and South Africa, are regarded as the best constitutions. It accommodated everything.
Following the promulgation of the constitution, Uganda's parliament was freshly empowered by the new constitution and mandated to make laws for the nation's peace, order, and good governance, protect the constitution itself, and promote democratic principles. Armed with this mandate, it has been able to make amendments on several key issues in the constitution. On the 28th July 2005, a referendum on restoring multi-party politics was held in Uganda. 92.5% supported restoring multi-party politics. In the same year, Parliament passed a constitutional amendment to remove presidential term limits, allowing the president to seek indefinite re-election. In 2017, the Parliament amended the Constitution to remove the presidential age limit of 75 years. The original 1995 Constitution of Uganda had set a maximum age of 75 for presidential candidates. The bill was passed by Parliament on December 20th, 2017, amidst heated debates and chaotic scenes in the chamber, including physical confrontations among lawmakers. President Museveni signed the amendment into law in January 2018.
So people say, what was wrong with the Constitution? Nothing wrong with the constitution. If we want to implement a constitution to the letter and the spirit, you must select, appoint, and elect people who believe in the sanctity of that constitution. You must entrust it to people who have integrity, who have the belief in their country, who are patriotic. So the constitution has not failed. The constitution is still intact. It's the best we could ever have. We cannot have any better one. What has failed us are the people who entrusted with the responsibility to implement it and enforce it.
In spite of criticisms from sections of Ugandans for failure in implementation of some key issues, Uganda's 1995 constitution still remains a significant legal document that relatively establishes basis for effecting a democratic system based on sovereignty of the people, commitment to human rights, and principles of unity, peace, equality, and social justice.
UBC inspires.